Hello everyone, this is Appendix F, a case study. The title of this particular case study is The Campus Response to a Student Gunman. This case study is written by both Creswell and Asmussen. I may be saying his last name incorrectly. It was a very interesting study, and hopefully you're able to pick up some ideas about case studies in general. Creswell makes note that qualitative studies need to focus on multifaceted views of research. He seems to kind of represent that most studies are typically only coming from two kinds of areas, one that stems from content and one that's followed up with methodology. However, he suggests that in order to make a more rigorous and more deeply associated study, you need to actually focus on three different types of ideas. The first one is basically inquiry. After that, he kind of suggests go ahead and move into research design and those design procedures. And following that, you can focus on the philosophical and theoretical frameworks and assumptions. Creswell suggests, by using these three focuses together, that a study becomes more thorough and intricate and is able to actually kind of do its main focus and goal. So with this Appendix F, the main focus of this study is how one campus reacts to a gunman incident. The main summary of the article is shared via a case report method. Mainly the incident is that on Monday in October, a graduate student who's 43 years old walks into a classroom of actuary students and attempts to use a rifle to shoot 20 of the students in class. The students end up pulling desks over them to take cover. However, the graduate student's rifle basically jams, and within those 20 seconds that he comes into the classroom, a student pushes a desk into him and the rest of the students in the classroom escape. Later, the graduate student was apprehended. The way that this is kind of written caused me to do some research on this side. I actually kind of wanted to look into when did this happen and where did this happen? And so I did a little wiki search quickly, and I found out that at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, there was a gentleman who walked into a classroom with a .30 caliber gun, and he attempted to fire on 20 students. Currently, he is in Lincoln's Regional Center Forensic Mental Services Unit, and he is obtaining help at that point. Creswell basically brings about this main idea that we need to focus on, which is how did the campus react? There's so many questions and so many different ways to uncover that immediate question. For instance, Creswell suggests that one person could actually be interviewed, and the only fault with that, though, is that it's only one perspective. Additionally, you can kind of look at a cultural group's perspective or even that immediate class's perspective and try and get more ideas of what had actually happened. All of those thoughts come together, and it causes the researchers to kind of reiterate and re-examine their question. And they decided upon an idea more or less like, how does a campus resolve a problem of attacks on campus? Why is this a case study? Referring back to table 4.1 in our Creswell text, you have obviously the main areas that you're focusing in on. A case study is pretty much laid out perfectly in this example according to this table. And so I'm going to go through that in the next couple of steps here. So immediately, the focus for this particular Appendix F was to develop an in-depth description and analysis of case or multiple cases. Initially, this case study is presented with examples across the United States of other examples basically of violence on campus. They make note of the University of Iowa's gun violence stemming in 1991. Personally, this immediately made a connection with me as I went to the University of Iowa, and this is one thing that I do remember, not from when I was actually in campus, but from stories of professors who were actually on campus at this time. And so that made an immediate connection to me as a reader. What's kind of unique about this is after gaining insight from all these different examples, the authors then suggest how these incidents raise concern for safety, how they raise concern for psychological trauma, and what we actually need to do, which is to continue to study to find a need and solution for this. The type of problem that is actually provided in this example is that or the way that they actually take the reader is very chronological. The events are listed for 2 weeks following the attack, and both researchers actually began this study 2 days after the attack happened. And so that kind of builds the reader with a deep understanding of the case. They then what's kind of unique about each individual author is that I did do a little bit of background research on each author and find out that Creswell actually has a background in educational psychology. We knew that from his book that we are reading, but then I had to look at the second author, Asmussen, and he is a criminal justice professor. And so those two together bring out this idea of drawing from psychology and really law. Next, they basically start studying this event and they come up with some observed themes. And these themes are stemming from interviews and different other types of research. And they focus on the themes of denial and fear and safety from oneself. And they even involve some parental viewpoints of parents calling in and asking about the safety of their kids and talking to their kiddos themselves. And then the idea of, will this stem some regeneration of incidents on campus? In the study, they refer to this as retriggering. And then the potential for safety on campus from both student and parental concerns. So is this, a campus planning that the entire administration needs to focus in upon? Themes are basically presented from this one particular event. As I kind of alluded to earlier, is that the resources that are used, the data collection forms for this particular case study, are interviews, observation documents, and audiovisual materials. There's more than just simply interviews used. The next part of this is that there's a data analysis strategy to kind of focus in on, and that's the idea that all the cases and the themes work well and they cross over together. Well, those themes that I've kind of already mentioned is denial, fear, safety, and campus planning. And then basically what they do, both authors, is that they reorganize those main ideas into two main ideals of organizational themes and psychological themes. And both of these are kind of brought forth through this table where you can kind of see the evidence for the case and the questions for the plan and how these themes are kind of discussed. I think it was kind of important to look at the individual evidences and the people that they are talking to, that it's not just a need expressed by counselors or an issue raised by trauma specialists, but they've gone through and talked to leaderships and answering the questions raised by students reacting to the cases themselves. Finally, the written report itself kind of goes over the overarching ideas that the study is to focus on a plan for proposed safety in college campuses. There are even ideas that are kind of posed for other campuses to use this case study in an effort to help design plans for attacks on their individual campuses. Overall, this study is laid out really nicely. Through the use of the themes, it's pretty easy to follow. It helps the reader easily comprehend and follow the events that are taking place. Through my research, I found out, both of the authors are very knowledgeable. With an educational psychology professor and a criminal justice professor, each of them are well equipped to actually go into the role of talking to these students 2 days after this attack had happened. What this does, though, is goes, it causes me to kind of question as I was thinking about the authenticity of the study, and if there were researchers that had decided to jump in and kind of interview people 2 days after the attack, would it have been as safe, and would it have been as ethically right for those students who had encountered a situation to be talking with someone who did not have that background? That's just a random question that I kind of have with this. Finally, this study, because it uses those interviews, those observations, those documents, and those audiovisual tools, it really does help to show that the multiple sources did in fact validate the study. Overall, a case study is very interesting to read, and I hope you guys all take the time to actually take a look at it. If you do take the time to take a look at it, there is also a chapter in our text called Conclusion. It's chapter 11, and what they do is they actually spend a little bit of time, Creswell does, kind of taking this study, this Appendix F, and putting it into not only a case study, but also into a narrative study, and also into a grounded theory study. And he goes through all the different types and how he could have kind of changed the perspective to have this information applied to that type. It's worth a read. It's worth checking out. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Have a great one.